Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to our podcast. This week, our guest is Charles Rose, and he is a executive coach. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So, Charles, you haven't always been an executive coach. You built a software development company, and you've sold that. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what really made you get into the executive coaching?
Absolutely. To tell the story, I kind of have to go back to the beginning, which was for me in my teenage years, I was always into technology. And this was when the first personal computers started coming out, the TRS-80s, the Apple II Plus. My dad was generous enough to support me with both of those. And so when I was 6 years old, I was born in North Carolina. My dad got elected to the U.S. Congress. And so we moved to Northern Virginia, and that's where I grew up.
Okay.
And then over time, my dad was into technology, was one of his passions. And so he ultimately became chairman of the House Administration Committee, which is the gatekeeper for the tech on the Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you wanted to sell technology to a congressional office, you had to go through my dad for a certain number of years. And so a lot of companies came up and would give him samples of technology that he would bring home to me as a 14-year-old. And I got to learn and play and learn to program and all this stuff. And it was amazing. And the pinnacle of it was Steve Jobs came to the Hill to pitch my dad on using Apple hardware in congressional offices. And my dad actually did become an Apple office. But at one point he said, "Do you want to meet Steve Jobs?" And it's like my head explodes. And so he's like, "Okay, you're going to have 10 minutes with him, be respectful, have 3 questions, yes or no, sir, all that." And I'm like, "Absolutely." So I talked with him and it changed my life. Like this guy had more passion I have ever seen in a human being. It was unreal how excited he was about what he was doing and how knowledgeable he was about what he was doing. And it was so infectious. It was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to be technology. I want to be a programmer. And so I started in that. And so technology is about solving the mystery of, programming is about solving the mystery of why isn't this thing working like I want it to? And so you spend a bunch of time debugging and getting your code working the way you want it to. That started to get bored after about 8-10 years. And so I thought, well, what if I could solve the mystery of business and starting a company? And so I went from programming to creating a business that's programming. And then I left that to a partner. And then I went on to start another company that was an ad tech company with a couple, and we sold that. But the real thing was when I was still programming a bit, and I met a guy online who had a product. It was a piece of what was called shareware at the time, which was a model for the younger people. It was a model of giving away software because it was hard to find a merchant credit card account. You had to prove you had a storefront. You had to, unless you could get some exceptions. And I had managed to get a merchant account to sell newsletter subscriptions for a programming newsletter that I was publishing. And so I met this guy online. He was at Kansas State University. He's a freshman there, but he's got this piece of software he's selling, and he can only take checks for it.
Oh, wow.
So he's making about $1,000 a month with this piece of software, and it helps with dial-up networking. And I'm like, dude, why don't we take credit cards and you're going to multiply your sales? And in 1 month, he went from 1,000 a month to 6,000. And we were like, oh my God, there's a business here. And it was the same year PayPal started. And so we were like, okay, let's do this. So he immediately quit school, moved to Seattle. We partnered with a guy from Microsoft who had been the product manager for Internet Explorer. He left and started a website called winfiles.com. And that was a shareware aggregator. Well, that was the only partner we needed for sales and marketing. And so he got a commission on every sale. We got a button for register now next to each piece of software. So we did 200,000 the first year. We did 2 million the second year. We were on track to do 10 million the third year when the president of Digital River in Minneapolis or Minnesota called and said, "We want to buy you." And so we negotiated a deal. And 3 months later, we sold the company for $10 million. And that was amazing. And I was on a high.
Oh yeah.
And, but the high didn't last. And what I realized was a lot of what had motivated me was wanting to please my dad. And I did, but it wasn't as deeply satisfying as I had hoped because I wasn't doing everything for me. I was doing it sort of for external validation.
Hmm.
And so it was like, there began this kind of slump where I realized, oh my God, I haven't done my personal work. I don't have a girlfriend. I've kind of alienated my family. I've been working so much that I haven't taken care of any other aspect of my life. And I went into a depression. And from that, I found a coach. And she started to show me, how do I start to forgive things in my past? How do I start to get clear on what I want and start to establish purpose and clarify my purpose? What's my purpose in having a business? What's my purpose in, and ultimately it came to a place of service, that the real satisfaction in a business is in serving others. Money is amazing, but when you can move the needle for another person, it's the
Yeah.
greatest feeling ever. When you can help someone achieve freedom and joy and let go of all the weight that they've been carrying in life. I've never found anything more fulfilling than that. And that's what I do. That's why I do what I do. And so I've been building that over time. And then now I'm in a process of wanting to go out and talk to people and basically tell my story.
That's pretty awesome. I think that's cool how, the connection. I mean, and meeting Steve Jobs,
Oh man, it was
especially at
amazing.
14 and you're
Yes.
doing, the
Yes.
things that you were doing. I mean, that
Yes.
that had to be at that point, it had to be one of your idols at the time.
Absolutely. I read
Yeah.
everything I could find about him.
Yeah. I think that if people haven't read his story,
Yeah.
that's a heck of a story,
Oh yeah.
to read also. And then, I mean, you connecting with this person at, Kansas State. I mean,
Yes.
what was he, 22 when he,
It
is a
tops.
millionaire? I
Tops.
mean,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
like, especially back then. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that was
No.
unheard of back then.
Yep. Exactly.
So that's pretty cool. It really
Definitely.
is. Um, so you've done, you've grown multiple businesses is at this point, sold some of them and
Yes.
so forth. Um, and then now you're feeling okay, hey, I'm gonna say give back.
Yes.
Obviously you're getting paid for
Of
doing your
course.
coaching,
Of
obviously.
course.
Um, what is it that in your time doing the coaching, what have you seen as being the, I'm going to say, the barrier to you being able to coach people? I mean, because again,
Mhm.
lots of times, um, people don't know how to get out of their own way.
Yeah. That's a wonderful question. Usually it's denial. It's people thinking, I'm fine. Everything's fine. The house is on fire behind them, but they're like, no, 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 I'm fine. It's
Right,
like,
right,
I'm sorry, but you're not fine. There's stuff that we have, this survival mechanism that we all have where it's like stress comes up and we want to continue moving forward. So we kind of stuff things down into the cellar a bit. And that stuff accumulates over time. And we can get through a number of years, just kind of stuffing those thoughts and feelings that we haven't processed and worked with down into our subconscious, but it starts to stink over time and it starts to affect us and it starts to affect our relationships. And those are business relationships, personal relationships, and certainly the relationship with ourselves. It's not fun going through life having all the stuff and all the accumulation of this stuff that's undealt with. And it's like people are able to function so they think I'm fine. But it's like if someone took a moment to really check in and say, well, how do you feel on a day-to-day basis? You're like, oh my God, I feel like hell.
right,
It's like, well, we
right.
can work with that.
Well, I think a lot of it is, like you're saying, though, it's, you're lying to yourself
Yes.
first, then you're lying to whoever else. And so many times, that your life is a house of cards, and it's just like,
There you go.
one strong wind could come on
You
and
got it.
who knows what's going to happen,
Exactly.
from that standpoint. um how do you help the people get clarity and really realize it's like, okay, I need to rip this Band-Aid off
Yes. Yes.
because again, you already said it, not accepting and not really addressing it
Yes.
isn't going to help. And it's like, really to make change, it's got to be massive. It can't be just,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so how do you help them find that clarity and find that, yes, I need to do this.
So the first piece is looking at the relationship with themselves. That's the first and our most primary relationship. And so it's looking at, okay, what do I want and how do I feel? And it's like, and you get past the I'm fine, but it's like, no, 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 let's really get quiet and get still and say, okay, how are you feeling? And it's like, okay. And from there, that starts to give us something to work with because it's a combination of your thoughts and your feelings that are the pieces that we need to work with. One of the biggest building blocks is going back and seeing that people don't really know how to take care of themselves generally. Most people don't know how to love themselves. I've had clients ask me, what does that look like? I have no idea what that looks like. And it's like, well, pretend you have a best friend, pretend you have a partner or, wife or husband. How do you feel about them? You anticipate their needs, you think about what's going on for them, you think about, well, they're going to need a rest or they're going to need some food or they're going to need, you know, some sort of vacation or fun or work. But it's looking at the relationship with yourself like a relationship that you would see with another person. And what I do is what I call holistic coaching. So I look at all the different areas of your life, your relationship with your physical health, your mental health, emotional, spiritual, financial, your relationships with others, and your relationship with your career, which I believe for your audience would be the relationship with their own business.
Right.
And so from that, we look at purpose. One of the things we do is I have a tool called a clarity process where we start to get and define what's someone's purpose for that relationship. Why do you want to have a business? What's it for?
I mean, again, many times as business owners, I mean, everybody's looking to us to solve problems, to
Yes.
fix things, to so forth. And many times it's, in my prior relationships, it's like, I'm talking to you. I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. And it's like, well, damn it, I'm used to fixing. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so that makes it a little bit difficult. But if somebody has been suppressing, these feelings and doing this for so long,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, well, you don't know about feelings, you don't know about, and it's like, okay, do
Yeah.
I really want to pull the cap off of this? Because if I
Yes.
do,
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen because I've never done it before.
So you
How
have to
do you help
find
them through that?
Well, you establish trust, first of all, because it amounts to getting naked emotionally. And
Right.
you have to find someone you're willing to kind of get naked emotionally with and start to get to a place of even having the vulnerability to say, I don't know what I'm feeling. And it's like that's a great place to start. Not
Right.
knowing is a very powerful place because it's all full of possibility.
Right.
So I start with that, and then we can look at, okay, as you start to give something attention, it tends to expand. So when people start to look at, okay, well, how am I feeling? Over time, they might be in the shower one day and like, oh my God, I feel angry at my mom or dad or, ex or something. And I'm still carrying all this stuff. And I didn't realize it.
Hmm. Now, you say that you kind of take a holistic approach to this. So, they're dealing with business, they're dealing with their family, they're dealing with themselves.
Yes,
What about, God and religion, whatever the belief is? I mean, do
sure.
you bring that into it also?
Of course. If there's an opening for that, that can be an incredible source of support for people is having that spiritual foundation and relationship. Some people, their childhood was full of sort of hypocrisy when it came to religion or spirituality, and so that's kind of a turnoff.
Hmm.
But also for others, it was incorporated into their community or family dynamic, and it's a source of support. I've heard some of the top business leaders in the world say that their spirituality or their religion their faith gave them a great deal of strength, because as an entrepreneur, there's so many times that you need to have strength and hold on and
Yeah.
keep going. And it's like, well, what gives you that strength?
Right.
And for a number of people, it's their faith.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you're in trying to help coach people? What are some of the biggest challenges that you're running into?
Um, I think the first thing would be, like I said, the denial is someone be like, I'm fine.
Right.
And I think that's one of them. The biggest thing is just not realizing that you need this, that this is important. And it's like, if I look back, pretty much any business decision that I made that went south, I had a gut feeling that was wrong and I overrode it. I was like, nope, I'm going to do this because I need it, or I feel like, some other reason. But in my gut, I was like, this isn't the right person to partner with. This isn't the right company to partner with. And through doing that, I've had situations where I lost a ton of money, like six figures of investment in a corporation or a startup that I
Mhm.
didn't, gut feeling was like, this probably isn't the right thing. So I think that denial is number one.
Right.
Um, and having a sense of value. The other thing is getting people to learn to love themselves and be kind. So much about business is drive and achieve and focus. There are also moments where one needs to take a step back and reflect and take inventory of their life and their business and saying, okay, and that's where business strategy can come in. It's like you can have a better perspective if you're unbiased. A lot of people are carrying around resentments and things and thoughts and feelings from the past that they haven't resolved, and that's factoring into their business decisions. And it may be horrible for the business, but because of this thing in the past, they're bringing it forward. So getting people to see that is, I think, some of the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, because I would think, like you're saying, some of the things from the back, but then also if they haven't let go a lot of that stuff, then they're carrying that stress and that burden. So,
Yes,
it's kind of like, the volcano that's ready to erupt. I mean, it's so far, and it could
that's it.
be the littlest thing that, that
That's it.
pebble that drops in there, and all of a sudden,
That's it.
there's an explosion, which, is never good for you individually, but it's not good for your business at all.
Yes, yes, yes. And this personal relationship stuff is, if you haven't done your work, it's very powerful. I'm coaching a guy now who started a company with a number of others that got almost 1 million in an angel investing. And the
Wow.
whole deal blew up because one of the partners kept kind of stealing from the coffers. He wouldn't listen to the other people. He just wasn't on board. And they were finally like, you know what? Screw this. We're not going to do this. We're not going to move forward. And it had taken almost a year of pulling all that together. So it's essential. If you want to have good partners, if you want to, you know, grow a business with integrity, then you've got to do this work.
Now, in going through this, obviously, you're helping coach them, and you talk about, again, holistic. You talk about their physical being, their
Yes,
mental, emotional, and stuff like that. But you're also still helping them on the business side of things,
absolutely.
making sure.
We talk about that, and that's absolutely a part of it. It's just you'd be surprised, or at least for me, how much of that personal side is in it. Very often they know the mechanics of their business, they know the market, they know they have their ICP, they have their audience, they're clear about everything. It's just it's difficult to execute because of these issues.
Right. What lots of times yeah, I'm going to say that I think that many times people are going to think it's like, oh, well, I can't afford to
Right,
have a coach.
right.
And when people give that type of a blockade to you,
Yes, yes, yes.
how do you overcome that?
Well, I mean, you have to look at, well, what is it costing you to not do this work?
Right.
For me, yeah, I sold the company for 10 million. I had another partner, roughly half of that was mine. But because I didn't feel like I deserved it at the time, I found ways to give it away in bad investment choices, gifts to friends, like I found
Government.
ways, government, divorce. I went through a number of things, and
Right.
all of those just kept taking away more and more
Sure.
because I didn't fundamentally believe that I was worth it. What I find is that I also tell people that it's normal for us to think of elite athletes as having a team of people around them. They
Mhm.
have someone to coach them on like throwing the ball or hitting the ball. They have a trainer. They have a probably a MD. They've got a physio person. They've got a whole team of people that support them in doing their athletics.
Right.
Um, Business people are like elite athletes in the business world. And so it's giving them a team. You need a coach to work on the those personal aspects. You need someone to support you in the strategy and knowing your market and knowing your business. You need to be able to take care of your physicality. And are you getting enough rest and exercise and good food? Are you, like you said, are you taking care of your soul? Are you taking care of your mental health? Are you growing and learning every day as an executive? You've got to be feeding yourself with new information and new systems and thoughts from other people who've been there.
Yeah, I did, I preach lots of times to people. It's like, okay, you have to, have the right team. I mean, I wrote a book,
I love it.
the right plan, the right team, or the
Love
right
it.
team, the right plan. And it's all about, you know, you got to have your CPA, you got to have your attorney, you
Totally.
have to have your business coach, you have to
Yes.
have, your insurance broker, your estate planner, and so forth. And then you
Exactly.
need to get the hell out of the way and let them talk.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes, I mean, I would think it would be helpful for you if you're coaching somebody who's a client of mine and they, if they haven't necessarily told you about some of the challenges they're getting ready to have, for you to know that, because then
Yeah.
you can help coach them through it.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that that's something again, playing sports, most of my life, I've had many different coaches. So,
Love it.
I agree with this. When somebody is picking a coach, because I think this is extremely important.
Mhm.
When somebody is picking a coach, what are the attributes and things that we should be looking for when we're picking someone to coach us?
I think experience is key. One of the things that I'm grateful for is that I've had the business experience of actually being in the trenches and doing it, plus the experience now for the last 25 years of doing the personal, deeper inner work as part of it as well. So I'd say someone with experience. You have to find someone you resonate with. There's almost a dating component to this in terms of finding someone that you feel a connection with. And that connection, there'll be a part of you that might be a bit excited, and there might be a part of you that's a little nervous
Mhm.
because parts of you are looking to change. And that's always confronting for all of us. Like anytime I'm being asked to change, it's always a little bit like, okay, maybe I'm a little scared of this, but it's like it
Right.
gets easier every time. So experience, resonate, and also, do you trust what others have said about this person? Do they have good testimonials? Also, do they walk the talk? Do you see them embodying these principles in their life? And it's hard. I mean, you'd get more of a sense of that as you spent more time and talk to the person. So have a half hour, have an hour conversation. I always offer a free coaching session after a 30-minute discovery to just see like, look, if you wanted to get into this, this is what this might feel like. This is what this might look like. Because I find it difficult for people to make a decision without having kind of gotten dirty and said, okay,
Right.
let's go into the depths and see what we can do for an hour.
Yeah, I think that is extremely important, and I like the analogy of like you're dating,
Yeah,
because it's just like, if as a coach, you're only going to be able to go as fast as I'm willing to go.
that's exactly it.
And
Yeah.
if you're wound tight as can be, and you're
Yes.
like, let's go,
Yeah.
it's and I'm not ready to move at that pace, then
Yeah.
that's not going
Yeah.
to work.
Yeah.
For sure. What about, people that try to have their coach being their, their brother-in-law or their father or something like that? How do you feel about that?
It's an excellent question. And anytime you start to get into family dynamics, you always come up against boundary issues. And it's like, my advice would be let your brother be your brother and find someone who knows and has practiced as a coach, you know, and because it's a different, giving a friend advice is different than having the skills to assess where someone's at, intuit sort of what's next, and start to reach them with a very cultivated series of tools that have been used for decades, you know, to get someone to shift from one place to the next. And your brother's not likely to have that.
Yeah. I think sometimes also the tough love. It's hard to have a family
You
member,
got it.
and that can change other dynamics if you
You got it.
if you do that for
And you
sure.
might feel safer being fully open with someone who's a stranger at first than you would someone because you're worried about what this might reveal about you or what they might go reveal from your conversation.
Right. Now, when you're coaching somebody, how often are you touching them?
So we tend my default is every other week. You know, I find that weekly is only for someone who's really wanting to work on a very urgent problem. And I've got a couple of people who are on just maintenance because we spent years together and they just want to touch, you know, touch in once a month. But the vast majority of the people I coach are every other week. There's enough time to have built up stuff. I have homework that we share in like a Google Doc, and there's enough time for them to have some life happen that we can then talk about.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, is this something that you're still understanding? It's like, okay, we're meeting through Zoom or whatever
Sure.
every other week, but are you still kind of touching base with them throughout that time in between, I'm going to call it sessions, coaching sessions? I mean, or
It depends on the client. Usually not, but however, I am open. If someone wants to reach out with a direct message, I've had some people say, I'm getting into a little bit of a crisis thing here. Can we take 20 minutes and get on the phone? And sure, absolutely. Or people say, you know, I need a whole session, you know, next week. Can we do that? Because something's come up. So absolutely.
right. So it's nice to hear that you as a coach, you're flexible depending on what the needs are of your client.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, I guess if you, and this is going to be a little different for you. So if you could go back and tell your 14-year-old self
Yes.
um, something that you've learned now that you really
Yes.
wish you knew then, what
Yes.
would it be?
You're more capable than you realize. Uh, you're you're better than you think, and you are completely lovable and you deserve to have success.
That's powerful.
Because that was the piece that was my parents had gone through a divorce. We'd had a death of a sibling. There was a lot of sort of pain in my life that led me to some of those thoughts and beliefs. And over time, I was able to work through them and do the grieving and whatnot that I'd needed to do.
Yeah, no, that's pretty powerful for sure. Um, in going through, this being one of my last questions here. So
Yeah, yeah.
in going through doing coaching and stuff like that, how do you work with them on kind of their, I'm going to say their vision of themselves and their business in the future? Or is
Absolutely.
it more just now and because again, and a lot of what you were saying earlier was you're unpacking a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
but is it,
Hmm.
obviously you got to do the unpacking before you
Sure,
kind of go
sure,
forward,
sure.
but how does that figure into your plan?
Awesome question. There's several phases that I find in coaching, and like you said, the first is unpacking and discovery. What are we working with?
Hmm.
And I typically use a tool called the clarity process for that, where we get clear on your purpose in every relationship, your relationship with yourself, with your wife or husband, with your business, with your everything. That starts to get that more in alignment and defined. That's for now. Why are you in this relationship now? I also have a tool called Theater of the Mind that is around visioning. And the idea is that you go into the future I would actually take you into kind of a more of a meditative state, because this is something that's coming from your heart, from your creativity, and saying, if you could go in the future 5 or 10 years from now and imagine your ultimate relationship with your business, what would that look like? How would that feel? You know, if you could have the freedom to do exactly what you want to do in your business, when you wake up in the morning, what would your ideal day look like? What would you be doing? How would you be feeling? And so we get to define that. And then once we have that, we start looking at, all right, well, what do you have to let go of in order to get that? What are
Right.
the SMART goals that we can create? What action items do you need to do over the next little bit to move you to that? And so forth.
How do you, again, being a business owner,
Oh,
many
yeah.
times it's kind of like, okay, I got my list of things that I need to kind of get done. So
Mhm.
lots of times these things that we're working on ourselves or we're working on our business or whatever
Yes.
get pushed to the wayside. And many times it's the self-care
Yes.
and things like that, because again, we're
Oh,
we're
man, it's the
we're
first to
taking care
go.
of it. Yeah, because we're taking care of everybody else. I mean, you
Yes,
said that
you got
earlier.
it.
You know, only have so much time in a day.
I know.
How do you get them to make that shift? Because it's a shift, it's a transition.
By seeing the value, by seeing the value in it. You know, most of what we do are because we see value in these particular actions. And we have discounted the value of investing in ourselves.
Mm,
Even if it's for half an hour, 15 minutes, you can stop and do some breathing and meditation and centering and all kinds of things. If you have faith, prayer, like there's all kinds of things to get you back into a place of centeredness, maybe before you go into a meeting with a client or before you're going to do the next bit of work. But it's this piece where you raise the value of that and you realize it's essential for having all the things you want. You can't, it's the put your oxygen mask on you first metaphor,
right,
that you can't support all these people and things in your life fully if you haven't taken care of you. And it
right.
doesn't mean you have to take 8 hours a day every day. It does mean you need to do something. And so that's what we clarify.
So Charles, I could keep going about this because
I love it.
I like it. I think that it is in something that's important that truly every business owner, if not every person, really needs to have, because it is something that I'm finding as I'm getting older,
Yeah, man.
that needs to happen. But what have I not asked you that you wish I had?
That's a tough question because you've asked me some great questions. Um, I think maybe just the effect of the coaching is that what's available for people is less struggle, is more peace, is more joy, because so many business owners are willing to sacrifice all that in order to serve their business and their families and the people they care about. And it's like, you don't have to be suffering. You don't have to be. There's always going to be times where, sure, I got to push myself extra or get up early or stay up late or, you know, push. But that doesn't have to be the standard state. That doesn't have to be your normal.
Right,
And there's more available than people realize in terms of peace.
right, right. That's great. Now, Charles, if our listeners, if any of them, if this is resonating with them, they like what they hear and stuff like that, how can they reach out to you?
My website is charlesrose.coach. And so just come see. You can book a time with me. You can send me a message. You can see more what I'm about on my website.
Great. Charles, I really appreciate your time today. Appreciate talking with you. I've enjoyed our time together.
Me too, Gary. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Sure. Hey, this week our guest was Charles Rose, and he is an executive coach, and we will see you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.